get started. Matt sent out a lot of paperwork, so I hope everybody has it on their screen or printed copies, or we're ready to go. We'll call the meeting to order, and we'll have a moment of silence. Is there anyone wishes to remember? Good. Okay. All right. Well, we bow our heads for a minute. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Approval of we have two sets of minutes to approve. We'll start with the organizational meeting on the 13th. Everyone should have a copy of that. I believe, Nate, you gave one correction. We had to look it up. We weren't sure there was such a word as liaisoning, but apparently there is. So,
oh, the DOD would tell you absolutely.
I know. Anyway, so are there any other corrections? If not, could I get a motion to approve the July 13th town organizational meeting?
I move that we approve the July 13th, 2020 town organizational meetings as were amended.
Okay, is there a second? Who? Okay.
Second.
All those in favor? Just raise your hand. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move to the July 13th town council meeting. I don't believe we got any requests for changing or editing. So is there anyone that missed their opportunity earlier today? Good. If not, if I can get a motion to approve the July 13th town council meeting minutes.
I move that we adopt the minutes of the July 13th, 2020 town council meeting.
Is there a second?
Second it.
All those in favor? Raise your hand. Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Susan and Matt, for putting those together. All right. We will go on down to the from the mayor and the town council. We met by Zoom for a work session last Friday at 11 a.m. with MCDOT and SHA regarding State Highway 547, mainly between the block of 4,000 Knowles, but we did go further up too. Darin, did you want to start the conversation on that?
Sure. We just brought them in because we wanted to talk to them about, well, the intersection in general and kind of development along that corridor specifically. There have been some concerns raised in the community and adjacent communities about what was being done with some of the road widths and what was being done with bike lanes both now and in the future. And so we thought it was a good idea to bring them to meet with both of the people that are making the decision regarding this. Now, we had also invited Montgomery County Planning staff to join us, but they had a scheduling conflict at the last minute and could not join us. So we got two of the three, and I thought it was a productive meeting. And I don't know when on the agenda you wanted to address it, but I had put an initial draft of a follow-up sort of thank you and follow-up letter to county and state for your signature and for our approval before we send it.
Yeah, we'll address that. I just wanted to get everybody's feedback on any comments they had about the work session. So Nate, did you want to address anything particular?
No, I think that Darin, well, just to add, I mean, Darin did a good job summarizing it, but I think one of the really encouraging parts of the discussion was just their agreement to kind of think about this in a more integrated and holistic way, moving forward, working with the town and working with our community for this and other similar areas that are under significant development. So okay. That's a good summary. Thank you, Darin.
Conor?
I'll just add, kind of echoing a little bit of what Nate was saying. The other thing that I think is beneficial, which just kind of echoes a continuing dialogue with State Highway Planning and MCDOT is that some of the planning vision for transportation is evolving and changing, and we'll talk about it later, but the Thrive Montgomery document talks a little bit about that as well, that there's a emphasis on pedestrian and bike safety. There's an emphasis on having local development where people can walk and bike within 15 minutes, and they're trying to de-emphasize automobiles. I realize that is lofty. I realize that is really being optimistic. I do. They're planning, this is a plan that goes 30 years into the future. So I get that it is very lofty, but it did help me to hear them re-emphasize some of the planning and engineering strategies and tools that they are using to put an emphasis toward pedestrians and bicycles and less on vehicles, meaning, they want to keep those who are the most vulnerable, the most safe, even if it means it may slow down a vehicular commute by a minute or two. And so they did a good job of going through what it means to shorten distances of crosswalks and how to bring up visibility and how to engineer everything from turns to lights to pedestrian lead signaling, all things to give advantage to those who they consider the most vulnerable, those that are the least protected by a physical item, such as pedestrians and bicyclists. So it is good to be involved in that ongoing conversation as they bring those development practices to us.
You're muted.
You're muted, Tracy.
Bridget, do you have anything you want to add? I know you had some problems with the audio. Mine was just
you answered all my questions. I was confused about it. Was not the pedestrian refuge, but there was another term. Let me see if I can find it.
Uh-oh. Not experience, right?
I wrote it down. Lead pedestrian interval. That was the only thing I don't know.
So lead pedestrian interval is the idea that at a signal, at a controlled signal, the pedestrian crosswalk will go first. All cars will be on red. Because I had to ask this, I'm not an engineer, but all cars are on red in all directions, and the pedestrian sign goes first. And they get 6, 8, 10 seconds lead before any of the vehicular traffic lights go green. So the idea is let them get the majority of the way through the intersection before vehicles start moving, or through the crosswalk. Well, sorry.
Do they take into account, like, if we have senior housing around, like, or just you're slow? Like, do you, like, 10 seconds, 11 seconds,
Yeah, I'm just picking up numbers, but I will say I've looked at it with MCDOT before, specifically when we were talking about Connecticut Avenue crossing, from the west side or east side and vice versa, that it's 6 lanes of traffic. It's a long distance. And that's one of those engineering standards or sound engineering practices that they look at, is how long it takes the average person to get across, and then giving lead interval timing. And then the other thing that they brought up is, as we've all kind of seen over the last, I don't know, maybe it's a decade now, that pedestrians have the countdown clock, right? That they have an idea of when that light may change. So if there's 4 seconds, don't start. Just wait a cycle. Yeah.
I know this issue actually came up, but I think Delegate Card brought it up specifically at Pliers Mill and Connecticut, why they couldn't have one of those there, because right now you can only cross in 2 areas, and why can't you do 4? Like in New York City, they have that where they just close down the intersection, but they have hundreds of people that are crossing at one time. The likelihood of even having one, maybe, and State Highway pretty much said they can't afford that backup of stopping the intersection completely.
So I'm sorry if this was redundant, because I don't remember that, but I was thinking more of just trying to cross, where the Safeway is.
Well, that's a type of intersection, because you can't cross from the shopping center to Shell Station.
Right,
But
right.
it require that lead time where it closes everything down at once. But can you imagine the backup if you were
Right.
allowed additional 30 seconds for somebody, to do that? It would
Yeah.
be just, that's not something that would, especially for one or two people. New York City is hundreds of people. That makes sense, but not here. So anyway, they rejected that idea.
No, but like, not that we should do it there, but I was thinking of myself trying to cross it fast enough. But more so for the folks who are trying to get across, to Chipotle or whatever those things are. If they're coming out of the senior housing there and trying to get across Knowles, just a concern.
Well, it is a problem because I know on the listserv somebody had suggested that people, stop to take a right onto Knowles. The problem is when you have, as a pedestrian, you have the crossing when people have the green light going south on Connecticut. So
Right.
you're not yes, you're supposed to yield to the pedestrian. You're supposed
Right.
to, but you're not supposed to come to a full stop on a green light to take a right.
Yeah.
But kind of so
Just run faster.
right. I use I'm always looking at them. So it's difficult. So you all received the red line of the letter to MCDOT and SHA. Was there any further discussion on that? Ready to go?
So I think, Tracy, I think it's ready to go. But just, I guess, to rehash one additional point for the benefit of those on the call that weren't, or in the meeting tonight that were not present, was that in the letter that you're referencing, we also just reiterated the point where we welcomed their suggestion that this is still kind of in the design phase, and that they're expanding somewhat the scope of what they're analyzing SHA is, and that they'll continue to seek our input and the public's input on that process. Just to flag that here for everyone.
Right, and it was a recap of the meeting, and as you said, to let them know that what our expectations are going forward. Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. So we'll go ahead and get those out probably tomorrow. Then should get them out tomorrow. Is there any discussion further from the council before I open this topic up to the public? Okay. Is there any discussion from the public? You can raise your hand on this issue. Jeff, go ahead. Just be sure to unmute yourself. Jeff, be sure to unmute yourself. Okay. Go ahead.
Just a brief technical question for those.
Can you just say who you are, Jeff, just so the record?
Yes. Jeff Griffith, the Vice President, Parkwood Residents Association.
Thank you.
I was unable to attend the work session, and I was wondering, for those of us who couldn't go there, those of us who couldn't be there, when the recording will be available of that session.
We should have the recording up later this week. Matt, did you have a particular day you were going to be able to get that?
Based on our workload right now, either late tomorrow or Wednesday. So we'll pull the audio stream out and then we'll send it out. So
fine, it'll be on your website.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know that cable TV Montgomery also puts out these recordings, but I don't know what their time frame is for putting it up. You can, if you go to their YouTube feed, you can. It's not up yet, but you can go to their.
The work session wasn't put on the live feed. So
never mind.
Yep. So tonight's meeting is so it's available right away, but the work session was not. So we'll take the audio out of it and have it to the website either late tomorrow afternoon or Wednesday morning.
Okay. Was there anybody else? I can't, not everybody's in my picture, so you can wave your hand. Matt should be able to see you. You see anybody else, Matt? Fortunately, I pulled up participants on my pad and now I can't get rid of the list. So Darin, I'm sorry, I can't see you anymore. So, okay.
Yeah, not seeing anybody else.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. All right, well, let's move on then. All All right, so we'll go down to the town elections, number 2, town elections subcommittee. Nate and Darin, you asked to be put on the agenda to discuss. So I don't know who wants to start.
Nick, you want to start? Or? You're muted.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to give a little bit of context, and then Darin, if you don't mind complimenting a little. So Tracey had asked, Mayor Tracey had asked us to do a review of and some analysis, initial analysis on thinking through how we might want to make changes to our election process, inspired by the previous election, which many would say was quite successful with the mail-in option, to include various different, a range of various different changes, some of them more operational, or how you might say administrative, for how each individual election is run. The flexibility that might be given through amending our code and our charter to allow a little bit more discretion, for example, to the Board of Ethics, or excuse me, Board of Election Supervisors. And and some of them being a little bit more significant, such as doing amendments or referendum to the code and to the charter that would expand voting access or voting eligibility. For example, people who are age 16 or 17, under 18-year-olds, people who aren't necessarily citizens of the country but are residents. And so we started our investigation by talking with the Board of Election Supervisors, at least 2 of the 3 members. We had a call with them. We shared some questions beforehand, and that was very instructive for getting some data on how this previous election ran compared to the other elections. And having their insights were extremely helpful. And I don't know, Darin, if we want to go into some of the specifics that we've learned, but overall, they were generally supportive of the way the election went, and interested in helping us to improve where there were challenges, and there certainly were some challenges. So we met with them, and then Darin and I, over the last couple of days or weeks, have been exchanging ideas to present to you tonight, just to get the feel of where the council is and where the town is for what, extent of revisions and suggestions we might want to make, because I think it depends on what the appetite is and really what direction we want to go. So we've gone through first the charter to see what changes may be within the charter, and then we haven't moved on to the code yet, but that would be the next step. But we really wanted to take a pause on that and get all of the council's feedback on this process. Darin?
Sure. And so thank you. That's a good recap. And we as Conor and I were trying to put together provisions for the last election, we had some great ideas, but then our town attorney told us that our charter and code didn't permit those, and furthermore that our charter could not be amended in time to overcome those hurdles. So we went from what we thought was a good idea that a lot of other municipalities were doing to what we did, which I think it worked well, but it wasn't where we had originally planned to head. So there are things hardwired into our charter that prevent us from kind of being flexible about the election, about the timing of the election, how it's conducted. And then so there's some provisions in the code, as Nate was saying. We're tasked on the subcommittee to end up with revisions to the charter if required by December. But I think before we go too far down that road, we wanted to discuss with the rest of the council and mayor some of the possible revisions and just get your sense of where we want to head. The last thing I want to do is put together a charter revision that you all say, well, no, we don't want to switch to all mail-in. We want to make it work but in person, or vice versa. So I can just go through the couple of the options. Nate touched on them briefly, and so there's just a range of things that we can do. The first option is we could do nothing. What's the likelihood that this is going to happen again? We can have an emergency-only plan that the council or mayor and council have the authority to activate. We could convert now to a mail-in election on an ongoing basis. We could do a mail-in election with the drop-box option, just like we did in the last election. And then there are variations of that. We could do a mail election, but rather than mailing a live ballot to, I can't remember what the number, 1,200 voters, we could send everybody a ballot request form. And then, as Nate mentioned, if we're going to go in and open up the charter and go through that revision, which has a fairly lengthy public involvement process, are there other changes regarding elections that we want to make? As he said, do we want to let 16 and 17-year-olds vote? Do we want non-citizens? And then, one thing I think is a no-brainer is, do we want to cancel the election if it's uncontested? So those are sort of the range of options that we've talked about and come up with, and I would just like to hear from you other three, or actually, everybody can weigh in with where they think we ought to be going.
Bridget or Connor, you want to start?
Before somebody starts, I did see a question from Joe Campbell in the chat. What were the challenges of the recent election? And I can address that quickly because I think it might color some of your responses. I would say one challenge was that 27 ballots that were mailed in and received by election day were invalidated out of 790. So that's about 3% of the ballots that were meant to be cast were invalidated. And then the mailbox that we rented for this election, and the rules of this election were it had to be received by Monday, June 1st. 20 ballots were received after that deadline. And so you had 47 ballots that were people intended to vote and their votes were not counted. So that, compared to the normal, it's almost inconceivable that when somebody shows up at town hall to cast a ballot, that their vote is not counted. There are occasionally times where somebody might overvote, vote for both candidates for mayor, but that's in talking with the election judges, so, that's a handful over his decades of doing this.
Okay.
So that's one challenge that I can identify from the last election.
Okay. Bridget, you want to start?
If I can just add, because it might help with Bridget's first question. Can you, Darin, just give an example of what some of the invalidated ballots were for? What caused the invalidation?
I know that one ballot was voted by a teenager in the household. Now, to her credit, she used her real name and real birthday, but it was not it was not voted by the person that it was mailed to. There were a couple of other affidavit problems. Some of them, I think if the election had been closer, the Board of Elections may have tried to count more of the ballots. With some of the affidavit problems were, I don't know, minor, I guess. But certainly the 20 that were received after Election Day were.
The ones that, just reading from our notes here, but the majority of those that were disqualified during the vote counting process were because there wasn't a control number on the outer envelope, because they only included the inner envelope. So there's a lot of, we discussed some of the challenges with the multiple envelopes and some potential remedies for this, but the envelopes were a little confusing.
So sometimes it was just not following the instructions, which,
Right. Well, and we wanted to include some, integrity in the election. So we mailed everybody this outer envelope that had a control number on it that's tied to their name. We didn't want to know who they voted for, but we wanted to know that that person mailing the ballot back in was the person that should have been voting. And again, I don't believe that we have people in town who are trying to cheat or sway elections, but I think if we're ever asked, well, what did you do to make sure that it was a valid election? We had a list of things that we could point to.
right.
And some people just didn't use that envelope. Some people sent multiple ballots in the same envelope. And so, yes, they weren't following directions, but they weren't following directions in an election which, just by virtue of how we were conducting it, had additional procedures.
Right. Okay. Bridget, do you have any comments further?
You sure? You sure about that?
I did, not me.
I like the idea of increasing accessibility to the elections, and I've been thinking about the little exchange that we had before the election, and how it is really nice to get people down to the Armory. You get to have a little exchange, and I'm sort of balancing that out with like your physical ability to get there. So I'm kind of torn on that one. I could convince me, but as far as letting folks who are not U.S. citizens and minors vote, I think that's great. If you live here and you're willing to participate, that's awesome. I really encourage that.
Okay. Conor, any additions?
Having gone through it for the last cycle with Darin, I mean, I realized some of the challenges just because we have hard-coded dates and other things. Those can be overcome with a charter amendment. I do additionally agree there are a number of residents within the town that are foreign nationals that, they are neighbors and they contribute to the town and they participate in our events. And I would love to see their ability and opportunity to vote. I think that would be great. Honestly, I echo Bridget's concerns. I love the idea of coming down to town hall and voting. And it's one of the charming things about our election and our town, and seeing the people out there. And when it's a nice night, it is truly one of Kensington's great events throughout the year. But I also would rather see access to voting made as easy for as many people as possible. Now, we already have absentee ballots, so I feel comfortable that maybe we need to advertise it more, but anybody who didn't feel they could make it down to town hall, I think we had a way to accommodate them previously, and the town did a very good job of that. The question just becomes, we clearly had a turnout that was far in excess of anything we ever had, and I think it's because we put the ballot in their hand, in their living room. And how do we balance doing that versus trying to keep any of the charm that we find fun and as part of it, if there's a hybrid model? But then also, to Darin's last point, this was the challenge we had, was ensuring that we had all of the safeguards necessary that we, if challenged, the Board of Election Supervisors and Susan could put forth our election plan and demonstrate that the election, everything was done to safeguard each and every ballot. And I think, that too is critically important. So whatever we're going to do to change, whether we move to sending ballots out, we can just educate, because it is critically important that we make sure that the sanctity of the election is kept intact.
Okay. All right. I have a couple of thoughts. I do like the drop box. I think that's something that we should have available, even if we're not doing vote by mail for the absentee. That makes it easier for people. Either if they don't want to mail it, they can just drop it by any time. Don't need to go upstairs. They can just put it in the drop box to return it at any time. If we're not going to do vote by mail, I think sending out a ballot request form is a good idea. Have that mailed to each house, that they have to just pick up the phone or email and request a ballot. I don't have a lot of feelings about the under 18 voting. I do think non-citizens who are homeowners and pay taxes should be able to vote. I could be persuaded that if they're renters, they could also be, they're residents, and they could also vote. I do like Garrett Park does have the option in their charter that if it's an uncontested election, then they're just, no votes. They're declared the winners.
Mm-hmm.
But I did talk to a resident today who just happened to be passing by town hall, and I told her we were talking about this tonight, and I just said, well, what are your thoughts on it? And she likes coming to town hall to vote. She thinks it's that opportunity to bring community and to, you know, she realizes that that may not have the number of people that are voting when it's done by mail, but she just likes that that opportunity to actually come and vote in person. And she's been an election judge for the county, and I think that's where she's coming from. She just likes to see people come and exercise their right to vote. So
one thing I would just point out, so we have numbers. You know, obviously 790 people voting was as far as I know, a record. It is the 2012 election. I mean, uncontested elections, I think 70 came out for one election. But as far as when you have a contested mayoral election, the turnout is just higher. There were 556 votes in 2012. And so 790 is obviously more than that, but you know, that could be attributable to the fact that people were home by and large. So, you know, it's certainly a factor for me, but you know, I don't want to necessarily change things to grab those, especially when in grabbing the additional voters, we introduce that percentage of votes that will be disqualified.
Is there harm, though, in giving both options? I mean, to Conor's point about keeping the sanctity of elections, I think that's really important. But there is a distinction that he's making, too, between making access to voting important versus inviting people to vote. And I think if we're automatically mailing the ballots, that's inviting more participation and not just access. So this is one of the things that I think we'd have to think through very carefully, but is there a way to do both? Can we do a mail-in ballot that's also giving the option to, like you said, Tracey, Dropbox, use the Dropbox at the town hall, or to vote in person? And I think we get the issues around when is the cutoff date for mailing it in versus coming in person, not double voting. But I don't think they're unworkable. Just to ask your opinion on that, and then also just to say, Tracey's point, your point about, you said taxpayers, residents, homeowners, and potentially renters. This was an area that we got specific requests from the Board of Election Supervisors for clarity from the council on who's eligible, because they said that it's a little bit clear, and there's not, according to them, there's not guidance on whose vote should necessarily count at an individual address. So I think that's something we can clarify in this process, and I think it's one of the more important tasks that we have, given the current system.
yeah, I think my experience with the election was most of the people that I talked to who are not U.S. citizens, you know, they owned homes, and that was their big thing. I pay taxes, yet I can't vote. So that was, you know, especially in a small town election, they just felt that was, you know.
Well, the provisions allow residents to vote. It doesn't matter if you are a renting resident or a property owning resident, but if you are an absent property owner, you don't get to vote. And I think that's a perfectly legitimate dividing line. You know, right. Again, we could have a discussion about it, but boy, I sure don't want to have a house that is owned by somebody who lives in Bethesda, but is renting to somebody else who's resident, sort of casting two sets of votes, which would be more than the resident who lives there themselves.
No, I mean, I absolutely agree. You have to actually physically live in the town, unless, although we do have registered voters that we were mailing ballots to because they own property.
Yeah, so how do you distinguish between someone who's just asking for an absentee ballot versus someone who's permanently moved away from the town?
Right. I mean, I think you get excused for that if you're in the military. I know my daughter, when she was she's in the Coast Guard, but her physical address was my home until she changed it to Florida. But, you know, she could vote, you know, in state elections, county elections, town elections, because her home resident was here in Kensington until she actually moved her residence. But that's the military. So
yeah, I prefer to leave that at the county level for that, because I don't want to try to discern who's been away for 2 years. I mean, if you're still voting and you live in Colorado, I think you're doing something wrong.
Right.
But I don't.
Another example, just to drive the point home, in the annexed area, there are 3 lots that are owned by a gentleman in Silver Spring, I believe. But there's no houses on them. They're just vacant lots, but he owns property in the town. Should he, is that an issue of confusion for the Board of Supervisors of Elections that, oh, he's a property owner, should he be able to cast a vote? He clearly does not reside in the town, and there's no homes on those properties. He just owns vacant land in the, residential land. And I think those are some of the questions that the Board of Supervisors are just asking, that it's a good time to clean up any of these things where there may be vagueness or room for interpretation, and help make it as clear as possible for the Board of Election Supervisors.
Okay.
If anybody knows of any municipality that allows non-resident property owners to vote, I'd be happy to look at it as a model.
Did you want to just contact MML and ask them?
Sure, I can reach out to them.
I mean, that would be the best way. I'm pretty sure, I want to say one of the municipalities down here does allow it. I don't remember which one, but I think during the election time period, one of the municipalities said that we allow it. So I just don't remember which one.
Well, and this sort of touches on a different, same part of this analysis that we're trying to go through. But we can change charter provisions ourselves. Alternatively, if we feel that there's an issue that really merits involvement of town residents, we can put it out for, at the next election, an advisory referendum, where we ask. I mean, we put alcohol out for an advisory referendum saying, do we want to switch from being a dry town? And that was put on the ballot, and people decided overwhelmingly yes. And so if there are questions of charter revision that we're thinking merit really, first of all, that maybe people will be embarrassed to answer no to, or maybe that there's strong feelings throughout the town, under 18 voters, non-citizen voters, property owners getting to vote wherever they live. We might want to put that on a referendum rather than trying to discern the town's feelings at a meeting.
Okay.
The only other one that came back to mind, and I'm sure Nate and Darin, it's on their list, but for the benefit of others, a challenge that Darin and I identified really put quite a bit of logistical pressure on Susan, our treasurer clerk, and Matt, the staff. And that's just that our charter has specific dates identified in it of when we pull the rolls from the county, and then how long we keep the voter registration for town, just the town election, our supplementary voter registration open. And that was one that was identified during our review of being just really challenging, that the town should really look at for the future. If we're going to change anything, let's make sure we look at it. And that is that, but we had to leave our supplementary voter registration open till roughly a week before the a week before the election. But we also then had to get it printed. We had to get it back from the printers. We had to get them in the mail. We had to get them, so it wasn't weeks, but that time frame was really, really tight. And so those are the kind of things that that's one I don't think would be controversial. I think Darin identified several others I think would absolutely be worthy of a advisory referendum, but these are just little things that we now have the opportunity to clean up, because it puts an unnecessary burden on staff that is self-inflicted, and we could correct it.
Okay. Anyone else from the council have any comments before we open it up to the public?
One last question, since you've mentioned, at least 2 council members mentioned the advisory referendum idea. If this were to go forward that way, would we have a special election for it? Because we'd obviously want these changes if they happen to take place before the next election, right? The next council election. So have we done that as a special election before?
The thing about that referendum is that it's not a binding referendum. It's not a referendum that's provided for in the charter. It's more informational for our purposes. And so I don't know if we can have an election where there's nothing being elected. We'd have to follow up on that question because I don't know.
Is that a ballot measure? Do we have a ballot measure?
Ballot, yeah. But if it's only advisory, then you're right, Darin.
We could use a Google poll for that.
Google poll.
Well,
We don't have to get fancy, you know.
you youngsters know more about, ensuring that people vote once on Google.
Or TikTok, is that another one where people can?
Nope. That won't work.
All right. Okay. Well, let me open it up. Fortunately, you can hear me and I can hear you, but my screen is otherwise frozen, so I cannot see anybody coming up. It's just stuck. I can't unmute. I can't stop video. So,
we have their video off, but if anybody is interested, they can turn their video on or just post that they're interested in making a comment in the chat. And yeah. Matt and I are monitoring that.
Okay, I see Dr. Joe has a question.
I do. Thank you, Mayor Furman. Very interesting discussion. I think the turnout was exceptional, was astonishing in the June election, and there was some data that just posted by Matt that indicated that well over half of the town eligible voters turned out. I think it's important to know more about some of the logistical difficulties that were encountered in the election, especially the challenges related to putting together the absentee or the mail-in ballots. The affidavit portion, I understand, was complicated for some voters, and they didn't follow instructions properly. I'm not sure how many of those votes were nullified or accepted, but I gather there was quite a few ballots that were improperly assembled, if that's the word. Also, that drop box was problematic too, in the sense that people were confusing the drop box with the UPS delivery box in front of town hall, a cardboard box. And I know for a fact, I saw firsthand a number of ballots that had been deposited in that UPS box, mistakenly thinking that they were ballots for the town election. And I notified one of the election supervisors to this fact, and I think she got the matter addressed. But nonetheless, it was one of those elements of confusion that I'm sure that can be resolved, but nonetheless were present and threatened to mar the election and the turnout. But I would like to know more about the problems with the absentee ballots and how many suspect ballots, if we can call it that, were ultimately accepted, even though they were not properly put together in terms of the envelopes that had to be submitted and had to be completed for people to vote properly.
Darin, do you have that information? I know Susan does, but I can't see.
I don't know. I can't go ballot by ballot for the 27 that were disqualified. Aside from saying that obviously one was purposely voted by somebody else. There might have been two others that were voted by the non-recipient, but we have to leave the election up to the election judges to make those judgment calls. So for example, if a husband and wife mixed up their ballots and sent them back in the wrong envelope or combined them in the envelope so that there's a control number for that household that contains two votes, it's got to be left up to their discretion. I don't know if they would tell us about each of the ballots that disqualified, because again,
yeah, that's not exactly my question. I was wondering how many of those kinds of ballots there were that wound up being counted, even though there were problems with their submission.
There were 163 affidavits placed within the actual ballot envelope. 163. The Board of Supervisors of Elections decided to count all 163 ballots because it was just a substantial number. So what they did was one member tried to pull out the affidavit without looking at the ballot, and then another member of the Board of Supervisors of Elections took the ballot, so they were trying to separate, so they didn't see who was voting for who. So I know Spencer mentioned they had a difficult time doing that.
And normally those 163 or those 163 ballots could have been disqualified if they were applying strict measures.
That's what the
Presumably.
Board of Supervisors elections told us. They could have disqualified the ballots, but they didn't think it was fair.
And they went into this trying to count ballots, and so that they decided that that would not be a reasonable judgment to invalidate those.
Right, but we're looking at 20% of the of all ballots had some problems with it. I think that's a significant number. And if those numbers, if that 163 had been disqualified, some of the races were close enough that the outcomes could have been different, presumably. And I think a 20% flaw ratio is substantial in a mail-in election. Thank you for those data points, Matt. That's very important to know about. 163 could have been disqualified, but weren't.
Any other questions? Joe? Are you good?
I have no other questions, Mayor Furman. Thank you.
Okay.
Karen
At least
Vincent,
not for now.
Tracy.
Yes, Karen.
This is my first meeting I've attended, and I am confused about the actual, so I understand, I haven't lived here my whole life at all. I understand that the town of Kensington and then Kensington are two different things.
Yeah, because you're a Parkwood resident, is that correct?
Pardon me?
You're a Parkwood resident?
Right.
Just
So I am not part of the town of Kensington.
Correct.
Correct. So has there ever been any, thought about including like the rest of Kensington?
You would have to be annexed into the town, which means that you would have to pay more taxes, just so you're clear on that.
Get
But-
better snow plowing.
What's that?
They would get better snow plowing though.
Twice a week trash service.
Single stream recycling.
Let's not let all good stuff out, Connor.
Oh, right.
Yeah, well, because really though, like we're in the surrounding area, we're part of, like all these decisions greatly affect us. Yet, so I'm just curious how.
Well, you're not in the incorporated boundaries. You're asking a question whether we have ever included, widening the boundaries. We did annex a year and a half ago, the north side tip of the town that was outside our boundaries. It was about 40 homes, I believe.
Okay.
So we did annex them into the town.
Okay.
But it didn't change the overall town. We're a population of less than 2,000. If you were to, let's say, annex Parkwood, that would probably more than double the size of the town. And that would change the smallness, if you will, of the incorporated town. I'm not saying it's bad or good. It does change the overall town. So it's not, I know Kensington Estates had one time, a small group had asked to be annexed, and people didn't want to do it because they just didn't want to enlarge the town that big.
I think that's interesting in the sense of, is that and I'm totally changing the subject, so I'll just stop talking.
Yeah.
But I think it's just an interesting concept to bring into maybe our modern times of, it kind of ties in with what someone said before, as opposed, it's like an invitation for people to be part of a community.
Sure, but where do you start? You could be part of Chevy Chase View. Chevy Chase View is an incorporated town. You could join.
Sure.
But we're up. Rock Creek Hills has a Kensington address, 20895. Kensington Heights has a Kensington address. Rock Creek Palisades has a Kensington address. Parkwood, Rock Creek Hills, Garrett Park Estates. You could go all the way down to 355. Where do you stop?
Well, I don't know. I was just a zip code thing, but okay, cool. Thank you for the.
If it's any
clarification.
Darin, I'm going to say one thing. I think it's a really important point, though, and it's one worth mentioning, because like you said, the decisions that we make here and that the town decides upon affect surrounding areas. So I think it's important for you to continue to participate, have your voice heard in these types of forums, and then I think that it was encouraging to hear the Parkwood Residents Association involved with the call on the work session. That was actually one of the triggers for us reaching out to SHA and MCDOT in the first place. So I would just encourage you to continue participating to the extent possible in those ways.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else on this topic?
Well, I will just make one comment, which is it's got to be a two-way street also, right? The north side annexation occurred because a majority of, they were able to get to a certain number that initiated the annexation to the town. It was that portion of the residents outside of the town that asked to be annexed in. I would, I'd hate to think that people are looking at the town thinking we're just out there land grabbing, right? We're trying to pull people in, because that wasn't what the north side annexation was either. And then to your point, Mayor Tracey, to Karen Vincent, I love Parkwood. Great, a lot of friends over there. Obviously, the kids go to school over there, but it's not contiguous to the town, right? Any conversation of Parkwood is going to first have to start with Chevy Chase View, and that's, they already got their own thing going on, and Kensington Heights, or Kensington Estates, sorry. And so, but it has, any talk ever of annexation is where it makes sense for both those being annexed in and for the town receiving those new residents.
Have we helped Nate and Darin your direction of where you want to go with this?
No, not at all.
I think we want a little bit.
I think it's been an interesting discussion, but I think we would still welcome some very specific direction. We could draft up a couple of scenarios and run it by everybody, but yeah, I don't know, Darin, do you have a lot more clarity after this conversation?
No, and maybe what we should do is take the next month to come back to us. If we meet in September, but it would be nice to really have concrete thoughts. So here's one concrete thought to consider. I don't think we're going to have another pandemic. I don't think this will still be going on next year. I hope we'll have the option of voting in person. But if in 5 years there's a hurricane, and we may, there's a saying that generals always prepare to fight the last battle. We could change the charter and provide for a mail-in election and then have something happen with the Postal Service. So one option to consider, which is really the easiest to implement, is to have the provisions, maybe tinker with a few of the provisions that are old or whatever, but have a provision of the charter that says by a unanimous vote of the council, they can change the election procedures. So that way, if there is something that happens that even our revisions don't address, we still have the ability to go in and conduct an election. That's one example. I'm not asking you to sign on to it. I'm just saying, let's be creative in how we give ourselves enough flexibility to hold an election, but also, hold an election that we feel good about.
The only other recommendation, Darin, from when you and I were being stymied, trying to get this last election out the door, is if it makes any sense to try and separate those items that are more logistical, right? They're the date-driven things that are built into the charter that really make sense to change no matter what, and those that are more, increasing access or increasing the voter ranks and might call for us, we may be more interested in the advisory referendum, because I think there are certain things that we might look at and be like, that makes sense to just change it now. It doesn't necessarily warrant any sort of advisory or other referendum. It's just changing hard-coded dates to making them something that is either, to your point, it could be something that's changeable by a simple majority vote of the council, or it's just written in such a way that it gives more flexibility to the clerk.
And Nate made that point, and I probably just didn't carry it through because it wasn't my thought. But just take away some of the prescriptions. So right now the charter says that we have to count the ballots within 24 hours of the polls closing. You could just take that away, and that would just give inherent flexibility. So yeah, there are a lot of ideas like that.
Yep.
And I have a document that I've prepared and I can share with everybody, where I just went through the entire charter and picked up any provision that was somewhat related to the election and sort of added my own thoughts about what should we or could we do with this.
Okay, you're going to share that with the group at some point?
Sure.
Darin, why don't we go through it, because we went through that together. Why don't we go through the code at this and then share both?
Okay, all right, that's fine.
But then I think that, I think it sounds like what we're concluding is share that document, but then would it be okay if we shared as like a series of progressively more involved measures that we can do and just figure out where we want to, what changes we want to stop at along that spectrum?
Sure.
We can do it, we just have to be careful about doing it.
Are you going, when you say that, are you going outside the election? Are you getting into other areas of the charter? Is that what you're saying?
No, but we're talking about for anywhere from just making these minor tweaks to giving more flexibility to having an addendum to increase the eligibility of who gets to vote.
Oh, okay. Okay, as long as it's all related to the election.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Because there are other issues with the charter. We just haven't addressed those yet. So.
That's not.
We're going to try to get to those before Matt retires.
Okay. It's been on his to-do list. Okay. All right. So are we good? Okay. Great. Thank you, guys. All right. So we're going to move down to number 2, the Thrive Montgomery 2050. Conor, you were interested in starting the conversation on this. You want to explain what that is, if you can?
Yes, I'm bringing it up right now. So this is a document produced by the county that kind of talks about their vision for development. And I'll read you the cover. It's a technical advisory group presentation. This is just draft, but it's their vision, goals, policies, and actions through the year 2050. And it talks to how they want to look at development, what were the goals they're trying to push forward in development, what are some of what they call the context rationale for how they're reinventing land use and zoning and development. They talk about things like economic disruption, social change, demographic shifts, the technical innovations, and climate change. So what it is in several sections is they take a look at the county as a whole from 1990, a snapshot, things like race and ethnicity, things like where just population centers are, and then they compare that to 2016 to show the shifts over the last 25, 26 years. And then they talk about, okay, well, where to go over the next 20, 25 years. So they look at the distribution of age, they look at how often people are working from home, and they try and strike comparisons and contrast between Montgomery County and other nearby counties, both within Maryland and DC and Virginia. And they're providing us the opportunity, I guess, to just provide some of our feedback or thoughts on this as it goes into a review process. So per the document, they are at, I'm just scrolling down, sorry. They are at the draft revision, which started on June 11th. This is going to be a working draft through September 2020 per their timeline. They'd like to have it to the planning board for review in October and have it under review from October till March of 21. And then if they keep their timeline, it would go to the county council in April of 2021 for their review and hopefully subsequent approval.
Oh, anybody else have any comments about the, I mean, this is the comment time period for, you know, if we want to address any of these, we have any concerns. I know some of the municipalities south of us have concerns. They're older neighborhoods, R60, like let's use an example of some of the Chevy Chases, Chevy Chase View, where they're 99% or 100% residential R60 properties. And this is allowing for an increase in density to allow, you know, a house to be turned into a duplex on an R60 piece of property. And that's something that they have concerns about. They didn't like the accessory dwelling units that the county approved last year. We took a different view, that we didn't have any problem with them. We didn't advocate broadly about it, but we chose to silently, I guess, support it, if you will. Because we actually do have quite a few accessory dwelling units here in the town.
So I'll start with some of my concerns that I noted in the document. Tracey, you've hit on one, which is density and housing styles. It's not, my concern is more, there's just no details in this document, right? It's an overview. So I get it, but the devil, as they say, is in the details. And the problem is, to one point, is what different types of housing can be in the R60, right? They talk about not just single family homes, you alluded to townhomes. It could be a multi-unit. It could be duplex, triplexes. They talk about all these variations and how they are beneficial. My bigger, and this is a concern, is, as we know from our sector plan, but it also applies to other master plans throughout the county, considerable time and effort. You know, the stories of what it was like within the town for those who participated in the sector plan, just trying to get it put together and published, and friends were made and friends were lost. And we have it now. It was published in 2012. The Development Review Board, the council, that is our primary tool for shaping development as it comes to us within the town. But that document has already been usurped by the county through the county's ability to apply zoning text amendments, or ZTAs. So you alluded to the accessory dwelling units. That was one, ZTA 1901. There's also ZTA 1806, which is a increase in density that will exceed what is already allowed for in a sector plan or a master plan when there are MPDUs, moderately priced dwelling units, incorporated into a development above what is required by the county. So that requirement now is 15%. But if a developer comes in and proposes 30%, 60%, 90%, they can gain additional density above what they normally would have been allowed. And the virtue of MPDUs is wonderful. The problem is it's kind of rendered mute many of the development terms, zoning conditions within our sector plan. And this Thrive document, my biggest concern is, how are they looking at the totality of master plans and sector plans, this holistic look, along with these overlays of zoning text amendments? Because, you know, they could be giving us what we want through this Thrive process, but they can come back with a zoning text amendment over the top and erode all of it in a different process. And that's it. You know, my concern is, this looks great. It's pretty. It's, you know, I know a lot of thought and time went into it, and I'm glad they're asking for our comments, but it can be completely upended through a ZTA.
I agree with everything you're saying. And I also found it a little contradictory. At some points, they're saying, let's increase density and also increase green space. But there's no detail on how these two conflicting things are going to work out overall, let alone in Kensington. So, you know, reading it, I got this impression of sunshine and rainbows and not a lot of real deep analysis. And, you know, the idea of supporting something without any details. So thanks. No.
Nate, you want to say anything, or?
No, I I had very similar comments, and I think just summarized by especially Conor's last point about what the implications are for our not only ours but other master planning or sector planning processes. What does this do in the absence of detail, like Bridget said, I think is somewhat problematic. I think we just want to know when we're going to get to see the meat behind it.
Because some of it is really exciting, right? Like the idea that we're going to protect more pedestrians and cyclists and all those things, like those are all great goals, but again, no detail.
Well, it's kind of, you know, right now where, you know, the density is good, you know, like Pike and Rose and, you know, these other places that they're building, yet, you know, during a pandemic, we're supposed to not be so together.
Right. And what is the appetite for buying that housing? You know, like how many people really want to live in a duplex? How many, when we see the developers come, they're not talking about building duplexes or apartments over retail shops. They're talking about building townhomes, multiple townhomes, no less than 8 that I've seen. And they're talking about building, you know, condos and apartment complexes. So, you know, it all sounds very appealing, but then, you know, in reality, I just don't know what the market is for that. I don't know how it would play out with the sector plan. There's just a lot there that's unexplained.
Well, and they, what was it? I'm looking at that one page here, page 10, stop planning for cars. And, you know, some of our biggest problem with any development that has come to Kensington is people's concerns about cars.
Yeah.
So that's like,
I don't know anybody who, you know, or massive amounts of people who are living in Kensington because they work in Kensington. They live in Kensington because they work in DC.
Right.
You know, and we're in between those 2 red line stops, right? So like, what is, you know, like if you're, you know, who wants to get up an hour early to take a ride on to, you know, all that stuff. So anyway, I thought it was a little vague.
I mean, we have a choice. I mean, we could not comment on it at all. Is there a particular direction the council wants to take? Do we want to make some? I did talk to Andrew Friedson we do these weekly calls and with other municipalities in District 1, and he indicated he was supporting this. He thought it was a good idea, and I know the town of Chevy Chase is, they're kind of digging into it as well.
I mean, I don't think we should ever allow an opportunity to submit our comments past. And I'm happy to submit, you know, mine around for people to add on to. This is something the county is obviously pushing forward. I believe, you know, some version of this is going to make its way through planning board and in front of the county council. So where we have concerns, I do want to get them vocalized. I mean, I have additional concerns. I didn't want to go through my whole laundry list, but one is this doesn't talk anything about how housing within or abutting a historic district can or will be impacted. And we have a rather large historic district. If something were to happen to a house that is within the historic district, could a multifamily style housing, duplex, triplex, could that be permitted to go into a historic district? You know, those are questions that are not identified within this document. Also, as a data person, the charts they have are worthless. I mean, I hate to be mean, but the charts miss key elements of data that help to bring information forward. They have percentages without populations. They have changes in specific units, but they talk nothing about, as somebody going through a renovation, nothing about homes that are considered single family homes that might have been 2 or 3 bedrooms that have now been over time changed to 4 bedroom, 5 bedroom, 6 bedroom, right? The housing stock within the county from 1990 to now has changed considerably. We had a conversation about Parkwood and it's happening in Kensington too, but our whole area, the greater Kensington that we were just talking about, is starting to see quite a bit of flipping of houses, where the Cape Cods, the Ramblers, the single family or 1.5 story homes are being turned into 4, 5, and 6 bedroom homes. I don't see anything in this document that talks about how the housing stock has changed. All they talk about is the number of new number of unit developments that have come forth. So it doesn't give a real holistic picture of what the housing stock within the county is now or into the future. So this is a long-winded way of saying, we know it's going to happen. This document is going to move forward. So I think it's in our best interest to put together our our comments and concerns and push them forward to the county for their review during this review cycle.
Are you going to want to look at it just how it affects the town, or are you going to look at it more broadly or include?
No, I think this is really a county snapshot. They look at things across the county, and I think they're drawing assumption. I'm not saying they haven't done the analysis. I'm just saying that the charts, graphs, and information they put in this overview, they don't give us the level of analysis they may have done. It's just a nice picture. And so as they talk about this, that is something that I'm trying to figure out. In a town like Kensington, okay, we have more multifamily than areas down in the Chevy Chases. And so, we do have that mix of housing, and we're having more, as more developments come, there's talk of townhouses, apartments, there's other styles of housing that's coming in, but we predominantly are still a large percentage of single family homes in the R60. So as they talk about all these multi-housing options, what does that mean? Are you going to allow, at the county level, are you going to allow somebody to build one of these within the R60, or are you going to allow them to build it within a historic district? Like, how much of what we control as a town is going to be usurped by what the county wants to do? That's what I'm really trying to get at is, let's be honest, if this is we're going to approve this no matter what, and you don't have a say, I just want to know how bad it is. Like, how much of our control are you taking away?
Yeah, and the zoning text amendments too. I know the one regarding the MPDUs caught us completely off guard. We did not know about it. I mean, until as we dug into it, did we realize that they could, if they max it out, they could go even taller than what the sector plan. Right.
So for those on the call, just as a benefit, some of the highest height a building can redevelop to within the town, in our town center, is now 75 feet, even though we have one building or, over that now. If it redevelops, it would max out at 75 feet. The intent of the sector plan was to bring some of that scale down because we want to keep our small town feel. But the ZTA allows for a developer to go in excess of that up to whatever is permitted based on the percentage of MPDUs in excess of 15%. And so it could go to 90, 100, 110 feet. And that is something the town does not have zoning authority. So it is out of our hands. Now we can write our letter saying we oppose it and the basis of why we oppose it. But ultimately, when it comes to the heights and what is going to be approved by planning and MPDUs relative to that ZTA, that happens at the county level. That's with the planning board. And while we can insert ourselves in our recommendation, it is not ours, the town's decision to make. And so for our neighboring communities, it's important for you guys to know we fight very hard for our town, for our whole area, our whole community. But there are still times that we find ourselves kind of sidelined and or blindsided by things that the county does.
On this point, can I ask a quick question on that point? And maybe I'll just claim innocence for being the new one on the council. About not knowing about some of these things that are happening, or you just feel blindsided. Have we ever sought the guidance of a planning specialist to consult with, not only just for specific decisions, but is there someone advising us who has this expertise, to be able to think in a more kind of regular way on these matters? Because I think that it seems like it's coming from all different directions, and we try to layer on this plan and how it relates to that plan and where we will be affected or not. I'm just curious if we've ever sought those services.
Are you talking about an overall view of the sector plan as it stands now, or
just someone to be on top of helping us to identify where, because I'm not expert here on this issue on the planning in particular. I know many of you have experience from your personal lives, but then also from maybe your work, with your profession.
I think the way we found out about the accessory dwelling units, that was MML, right? They wanted us to sign on to a letter against them.
Right.
And we did not.
So that's what I mean. someone that's helping us to kind of stay ahead of these issues.
So I think
someone out there
MML
that's
fills that
helping them.
role a little bit. You know, otherwise it's a matter of following ordinances as they come down the pike with the county. Yeah, I don't know anybody who does that.
Yeah, because I know with the Thrive, that issue was regarding the R60s and allowing for, you know, multifamily buildings. That came out of an MML chapter meeting from, I think it was Chevy Chase Section 5. They brought it up. They were concerned about it. Chevy Chase View is, they brought it up. They're a little bit concerned about it, and they're looking into it. And then the town of Chevy Chase. So, yeah, I don't know, you know, I guess you could hire a Montgomery County consultant to kind of keep an eye out. Is that what you're thinking?
Just someone that we could have on retainer, like we do with the lawyering services that we get, the attorney services, to just consult with these issues, because it seems like it might be a benefit. I don't know, maybe it's just maybe I'm thinking out loud, but.
That's all right. So just maybe to wave a red flag that this is something that you may want to look into.
Yeah, to help us avoid these blind spots.
Well, or at least give you an opportunity to maybe have a say in that you don't want it to affect the town. You want to do your zoning text amendment, fine, but leave the town out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. We can think about that. So Conor, do you want to take a stab at
Yeah, I've made most of my notes. You know, it's a PDF, so it's just comment stickies. But I will take one more look through it tonight and just send it out to other people to add any additional comments. And then I will, or you know what's easiest? If you guys just want to send me yours, just in an email, hey, Paige, whatever. This is my concern. I'll just make a running document and then submit it through you and Matt to send back.
Okay. Any other questions from or comments from the council before I give the audience an opportunity? Okay. Anyone from the audience wish to make a comment about Thrive Montgomery 2050? I believe the document is available on our website, is it not, Matt? Has it been posted with the agenda?
It was included with the agenda documents that was sent out on Constant Contact, and it's on our website on the town council page.
Okay, great, thank you. Dr. Joe, do you have a question?
Yeah, no, thanks, Mayor Furman. As I mentioned in a text or chat comment right now, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to dial in Council Member Andrew Friedson on these concerns that Council Member Crimmins has laid out. They seem to be serious, and they seem to be something we should probably make him aware of at a minimum.
Okay, I mean, I think the letter would certainly be, you know, any of our comments would certainly go to Andrew and the rest of the county council. But I think actually it's a good idea to have a face-to-face conversation or Zoom with Andrew to get into a little bit more detail and do some, talk to him personally rather than just the letter.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that makes a lot of sense to, at very least, to give him a heads up about some of the serious concerns that have been raised here, and to do so more than just as part of a letter. I think it'd be courteous as well to have that discussion with him that you just described.
Well, Councilmember Friedson represents all the municipalities south of us, so he is going to hear about it, particularly, you know, from the Chevy Chases. So he will get that opportunity to have some FaceTime, but we will include ourselves in that, and I'm sure Garrett Park as well.
Yeah, I think he represents both south and north of us.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure exactly where the stop line is. It's not, doesn't go into Wheaton, but it goes just a little further north. Okay. All right, anyone else have a comment? Okay, I don't see any waving hands, so we will continue on to number 4. the Ethics Commission report. Matt, do you want to get started on that?
So the Ethics Commission met on Friday, July 31st, and again on Friday, August 7th in closed session to render two separate opinions. Jack Gaffey is on the call if he would like to add anything to that report. And he's unmuted now, so go ahead, Jack.
Okay. Hi. I don't have a lot, but yes, we met with the town attorney to seek legal advice to prepare responses to requests from two council members who asked for advisory opinions on ethics issues. I think exactly what we said the committee should be confidential, but that's basic. That's a basic summary.
Thank you, Jack. Well, I'll let Darin start. He had a question, and which was not intended to be any sort of private question. So, Darin, do you want to just briefly talk about what question you had for the Ethics Commission?
Sure, and we're going to deal with it later in this meeting.
Right.
Under facts, but I did not mean for it to be confidential, and I'm happy I share it with the rest of the council today. My concern about, I have a lot of concerns about this $100,000 resolution payoff, whatever you want to call it, that the plaintiffs who sued the Knowles Senior Apartment Complex have brought to the town. And my reason for involving the Ethics Commission was that when you read the ethics provisions of the code, at least I thought it was open whether the code prohibits individual council members from receiving gifts, or if this $100,000 counts as a gift, and that we as the council are prohibited from receiving the gift, absent an Ethics Commission determination that we can do it without presenting a conflict of interest. They took the view that it was not, that it applied only to council members receiving pecuniary gifts, or gifts in their capacity, and not to the council or town as a whole. And so I accept that. It allays one of my many concerns.
Okay. And you had two other questions. Do you need to address those at all, or are you okay with?
Honestly, I appreciate that they went through it, but the additional analysis, but once they decided that it only applied to individuals receiving gifts, that I think it made the other two questions moot.
Okay, so canceled. Okay. Another question regarding Nate. Do you want to address that at all, or do you want to? You don't have to.
No, I do. I was going to wait till the ordinance was up for a vote, but
that's fine. You can do that.
When it was going to be discussed, actually, but I'm happy to do it now.
Okay. Well, why don't you wait until we come up to the ordinance? Let's do that then. Okay, good. All right. There probably aren't any other questions for the council. Audience, we'll have opportunity to ask questions during the resolution. If you want to wait on this issue, you might have some more information regarding, but you're more than welcome to raise a hand now or just wait. Dr. Joe?
Yeah, was the $100,000 payment, was that the topic of the Ethics Commission? Was that it? Was that what they were?
The topic was, yes, it was related to that, yes. But we'll get into more of the details during the resolution opportunity, and you can ask questions there as well.
Right. I just don't understand why the secrecy about something that's been made public. I mean, that just confuses me a bit.
It confuses me a little bit too, but what the ethics talk about, and then, because it was done in, under, not secrecy, but it was done in a manner of which they were just getting an opinion, and then if they wish to share that opinion, then they'll have that opportunity.
Can I comment?
Sure.
Well, first, in general, the discussions of the Ethics Committee are confidential. In this particular case, we consulted with the town attorney, so that was an additional reason for having a closed meeting. We consulted with the attorney to obtain legal advice to write our response to the for the request for advisory opinions from 2 different council members.
Okay.
So that's the reason why the discussions of the Ethics Committee are confidential. The council members are free to discuss as much or as little as they wish.
And if I could just add some color to that, I mean, I don't think there's secrecy. I think in 5 to 10 minutes, we're going to learn the gist of the second decision about Nate. I think, though, the point that Jack is raising is that if we have transactions that we're considering in our personal capacity, you know, maybe I want to, I don't know, buy some property in town, and I know something from my council service that would indicate it's going to go up in value. It's things like that I want to be able to raise it with the Ethics Commission confidentially without either jeopardizing what I know from the council or my personal circumstances. They give me an answer, and I either go through with a transaction or I don't. And so I think that the confidential treatment of the typical request is warranted. That's all.
Joe, did that answer your question?
No, I want to know who the 2 council members were who sought the advisory opinion that Mr. Gaffey referred to a moment ago.
Well, Darin already indicated that he had a question. So there's the one right there.
There were 2.
No, I was the other one.
And Nate, I mentioned Nate, the other one, and he was wanting to address it. And the question was, do I do it now or do we wait for the resolution?
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think we're good now. All right. So let's move on to council. Do you have any other things you wish to report? Bridget?
Generally or related to this?
No, generally.
Yes, I want to say thank you to the town and to individual residents for donating to the glioblastoma charity and for your notes. Thank you very much. That was very sweet.
Well, we're certainly sorry about your dad. I know that was a long and difficult time for you and your family. And I've been there, so I know how hard it is to lose our dad.
Yeah, that's a real nasty one. So thank you.
Nate, do you have anything you want to add?
Yes, just a quick update on the request during the last meeting that we discussed about forming a working group on pedestrian and bicycling safety and access. I drafted, at your suggestion, Mayor Tracey, a blurb for the Around the Town Journal, soliciting input from people who want to be involved with that working group. But the general idea is to take a fresh look at how we can increase pedestrian safety and bicycling safety and access in and around the town. So please, if you're on this call or you're listening to the recording and you're interested, get in touch with me and we'll be taking a look at that over the next few months.
Great, thank you. Conor?
I should have brought it up earlier, so I apologize. It was related to the work session last week. Just an update that the Metropolitan Avenue project is, their road closure has completed. If you aren't on the north side, which ironically I'm not right now, but Metropolitan Avenue is back open. It will have some number of lane closures in the future when individual utilities come in and bury their utility. Wilson, the general contractor, has said, though, it will not be a road closure. They will simply do lane closures in the off-peak hours and run flag people to keep the traffic all still within Metropolitan Avenue. But then I bring up what came about in the as a result of reopening Metropolitan Avenue after the road closure. That intersection at Metropolitan and St. Paul was just, in a happy accident, was put back with a four-way stop. But we understand that is, it's not a accepted four-way stop unless State Highway agrees to it. So we brought it to their attention during the work session. We helped them to understand how it's already having a positive impact at that intersection for controlling speed, for bringing cars to a stop, for helping pedestrians more safely get from north to south, and our desire to keep it as a four-way stop. And we expressed that we'd like to keep it permanently, but if we're unable to keep it permanently, we certainly want to keep it through the duration of the construction until the rapid flashing beacons, the crosswalk, the activated crosswalks, can be installed, which right now is tentatively supposed to be spring of 21. The positive feedback that we did get from State Highway is they do have a process and a procedure for re-reviewing this. The point is, even though it was not supposed to be a four-way stop, because it happens to be in there now, we will work with them to help them understand the improvements to safety along that corridor that it is creating, and then they will look to either do an administrative acceptance of the four-way stop or work with us on some short-term, allowing us to keep it through construction. So I volunteered during that time, I think with Darin, that, I will do everything within my power to work to try and keep it as a permanent four-way stop. And so I'm going to be working with Derek Gunn at State Highway and Matt to do whatever SHA needs to document that is a benefit to the town.
Okay, thank you. I know a lot of people would be happy if we could keep it a four-way stop. So, and definitely stress to Derek that it's a heck of a lot cheaper than putting in a mini hawk, which is a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Darin, did you have anything to add?
Was Matt saying something first?
Yeah, it was just, I spoke with Derek after a meeting on Friday. He transferred the request and over to traffic operations. And we're hoping to have an answer later this week to see if it's something they'll allow us to put in permanently or through at least the rapid flashing beacon installment. So hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have a clearer answer from SHA.
Has the town crew put up the restriction signs back on the north side?
Not yet, no.
Okay, will they get those up this week or?
We can, yeah. So the restriction signs are for trucks, no through trucks. So.
Right.
And
no, I mean
the right turns and do not enters.
Time restriction.
Yes, we don't have any of the restrictions up. So the trucks, the do not enters, and the no right turn at Oberon and St. Paul. So.
Okay, do they know the right way to put them up? You don't have Conor there to make sure it gets done.
I have confidence that if they're not, we will know shortly after they're put up.
Okay, yeah, we'll hear from people for sure. Okay, thank you. Darin?
The only thing I would add is that we have a virtual traffic committee meeting scheduled for August 27th. That's a Thursday night at 7 p.m.
Yeah, actually, do you want to mention the DRB this week?
Yeah,
Conor?
I forgot.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, good call. So there is a development review board meeting on Wednesday night. It actually will come after the applicant's community meeting. So I want to stress that there is a community meeting that is by the applicant. That is their meeting that starts at 6 p.m. The development review board will meet at 7:30 p.m. to review the same project. This is for 10509 Summit Avenue. It is at the corner of Knowles and Summit at the northeast corner. where there's kind of the grassy field right now next to La Gelateria. So the DRB will take it up at 7:30, but for those interested, there is the applicants meeting also at 6 where they will present it to the public.
And the agenda is on the town website, which will have has the Zoom information for our meeting. So,
Right. So to reconfirm, I did talk to the applicant again. The applicants meeting per planning, how they've asked applicants to do their meetings, is a conference call, and you follow along. And again, this is not a town meeting. This is how they are orchestrating their meeting to meet requirements of the planning department. Our DRB meeting will be Zoom, and all of that information is on the town agenda, on the calendar, on the website.
Good. Okay, and I would just like to just mention a couple of things. I know Nate brought up the Round Town Journal. It will be going to the printer this week, so people should have it in their mailboxes early next week. So it is the journal is pretty much dedicated to our business community, so to make sure that we are supporting our businesses. And I am sorry for those who didn't hear that Jenny Cakes is closing in September. I'm sorry to see them close. They've been a vibrant member of our business community, and they will certainly be missed. It's not all because of the pandemic. I think as Jenny had told me a couple of months ago that she was thinking about closing, and so she did come to that conclusion. I think it's difficult being a business owner, and it takes a lot of time and energy, and I think she's had a good run and she's just ready to take a break. So she'll definitely be missed. Also, we are working on another mural. It's part of the Clum Kennedy project. So it is a mural on the Frederick Avenue Bridge, and it's kind of cool. I've been out there. The Greenscape Committee helped with the design overview and approved it, and very pleased with where we are right now. It's the same muralist that did the one on the side of the Jubilee building, and Nicole Bouget, and she's on vacation this week with her family, and she will get back to the bridge when she gets back. But one side is almost completed, and it really looks nice. It's kind of cool standing there talking to her, and people drive by and slow down and give a big thumbs up. They just did, or smiling. So it really is reflective of Bertha Clum. She has these little books, and Nicole took a lot of stuff out of there. So the Greenscape Committee is really thrilled that she designed it for Bertha in mind. So it'll be a real gem in our community. All right. So from the staff, do you have anything, Matt, Susan?
No.
Nothing to report right now. So
I'm sorry.
nothing to report. No.
Sorry. Susan, I can't see your face, so if you're saying no, I can't.
Yeah, no, nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will move down to public appearances. If anyone has something they'd like to bring up that's not on the agenda, please do a wave chat.
My video is off. This is Jack.
Okay.
I guess two things. First,
Jack, still on Frederick Avenue? Just want to make
Yeah.
sure. Okay.
same place, 34 years. My wife and I really like the murals on the Frederick Avenue Bridge over the creek.
The other side's going to be even better. It's very colorful and lots of the wildflowers that Bertha
I look
wrote.
forward to it. I'm happy with what's there.
Good, good.
Point
Thank you.
number two, I would like to suggest that the council pass a proclamation of thanks to Jenny Smith for 8 years of providing wonderful baked goods for the town.
Okay, good idea. Good idea.
Give her some flowers or something, maybe.
How about cupcakes? We'll order cupcakes and they give them to her.
Yeah, well, but she's been a wonderful person. I always enjoy visiting the store, talking to the people, and it would be nice to present it with a proclamation.
I think that's a great idea. I do. So maybe we can do that at our September meeting.
Right. She is closing the business Saturday, September 19th. So the
So we'll have a
meeting
meeting.
will be before that.
Yes. Yes. And I know I forgot to mention this. I talked to Jason because we discussed maybe doing something for Mr. Gregg, and I talked to Jason about doing something out of wood, a sculpture out of wood, and he was very receptive to that. So he's already got a piece of wood in mind, and he's supposed to come back to me with a design and some location ideas. So I think
Sounds
that
would
be fitting to carve something in wood for Mr. Gregg. Anybody else? Karen Benson? Karen, you can go. You're on mute.
Okay, I got it. Okay. So I have a question in regards to the Office of Legislative Oversight's report on local policing data and best practices that was put out at the end of July. So I'm under the understanding that Kensington hires Montgomery County Police to do some law enforcement.
Our traffic restrictions.
Right, so traffic restrictions. So how does that work? They're off duty for Montgomery County, but then they're paid by Kensington. So who regulates them, and who do they answer to when they're doing what they're doing?
They answer to us. I'm going to let Matt answer the question since he works with that directly.
Okay.
Sure. So we hired 3 Montgomery County police officers last fall to do additional enforcement. They are town employees. They're allowed to work under their existing union agreement with Montgomery County Police and their local FOP chapter.
Okay.
We have 27 hours a week that they patrol. Each officer patrols 9 hours. And they have primary locations that were directed to them by our traffic committee, which mostly were around, prior to COVID, bus stops, different traffic restrictions. Once COVID hit, we kind of redirected them to maintain, watch over the parks. The closure of Metropolitan was a primary enforcement area for them more recently. But if there's any issues with them directly, you can, they still, if there was an issue, Montgomery County Police would still handle the internal issue with them.
There wouldn't be any confusion because they're working for the town of Kensington?
In what regards?
Well, it just seems like for me, my understanding, it just seems like a weird gray area. So I just want clarification so it makes more sense to me. Since they're off duty Montgomery County, but wearing Montgomery County uniforms in cruisers, but working for Kensington, implementing Kensington regulation. I'm just trying to line it all up.
So they are Montgomery County police officers. They can enforce all Montgomery County and state laws while they're in uniform with the town. What they do is, instead of, they kind of answer directly to the town while they're in town. Okay. They cannot leave the town while they're on duty with us. Okay. If there's an emergency call, they cannot go and take it. If, for example, they pulled someone over and they determined that they needed to arrest them, they actually have to contact dispatch. An on-duty Montgomery County Bethesda officer has to come and make the formal arrest. So they work for the town when they're with us, and they cannot leave our jurisdiction during those hours.
So does the town of Kensington keep track of their activities, or is Montgomery County doing that?
No, we keep track. They supply us with a weekly activity sheet that shows us if they've issued any violations or warnings, and then they also provide us with kind of a detail of where they were during their hours work.
Okay, so that being said, I'm curious because this report details different inequities in the demographics of people who are being, whether it's pulled over or assumed to be breaking the law for different reasons. I'm wondering if maybe something similar can be done for Kensington to see if those inequities are also present.
I can ask them. Since they are any violation or warning goes through the county courts.
Okay, so would it
would be a
signify
part-
where it was done in Kensington, right?
Yes. Once
Okay.
if they issued a violation or a warning, it should show up in the county's data.
And we do not get money for any tickets. The money goes.
Sure. Less concerned about that, more concerned with,
Yes,
equity
I
and
understand. Just saying, we don't get any of the money from the tickets.
Okay.
So I don't want people to think that we do. We do not.
okay. All right.
Chevy who also does this.
Mhm.
That's the model that we took it from, because we've been doing this for years, but we've been doing it more where police officers who wanted to make extra money would just sign up.
Okay.
And what we found is we didn't have consistency with police officers, knowing the roads, knowing the area which we wanted to. So we actually physically hired 3 people just so we could have more consistency, so they would know the town a little bit better.
Okay. Great. Yeah, so I would go to Montgomery County to try to get those actual details about the demographics of people who are being
Right. Our arrests are really all, not arrests, our tickets, I'm sorry, our tickets are really for traffic restrictions. You went through a do not enter during a particular time, but we're more into warnings and education.
Sure.
And-
So, but if somebody lives on that street, then they get pulled over and say, I live here, right?
Yep.
No. Oh, well, they still might get a warning.
Oh, they would still get a warning?
So I live
no,
3 houses past a do not enter, and my wife decided she forgot it was 5 o'clock, and she went through and she got pulled over in front of our house.
Oh, okay. So even people who live there.
Oh yes. Oh
Okay,
yes.
interesting.
We have to go around and abide by them as well. So
Okay.
Casey got pulled over. She got a warning, thankfully.
Uh-huh.
Like we instruct them to do, but no, there are no residents do not have the ability to go through any of the traffic restrictions. We
Okay.
have to abide by them like anybody else.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Clarified.
Okay, there's another hand up, I think. Dr. Joe?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Furman. Sorry, the video is deactivated. I would rather have that on, but anyway, I agree with you. I was favorably impressed by the mural on the Frederick Avenue Bridge that you referred to a few minutes ago. It was really quite a nice surprise to see that open air canvas, if you will, so nicely presented, and I think that was a real nice development in that part of town. And the Clem Kennedy Park nearby has been well maintained throughout the spring and summer by the town crew, and I think they deserve continuing kudos on their fine work there. I was wondering if the town has received any word from David Gregg about his last day on the job. Do we know when that might be? Is it? I think it's soon, but I'm not sure when that might be.
I didn't think he was fully retiring. I think it was more of he's just not doing certain jobs anymore. Like he was out pruning a tree at Town Hall and on Mitchell Street last week. Is that correct, Matt?
Yeah, he what David has told us is that he's willing to work with the town at least through the end of the year. Any large job that would require a crane or anything, he's asked that we contract out with another tree individual, but he's with us at least through the end of the year. So.
Oh, okay. My understanding was that his departure would be sooner than that, but he's such an institution in many respects in the town.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering,
Good.
Mayor Furman, what's it going to take for the town to? What's the latest update on the sediment control problems that we've been having? The houses under construction on Frederick Avenue. As you know, we've talked about this at previous council meetings. There have been no fewer than 5 episodes of sediment runoff during heavy storms, most recently last Tuesday during the tropical storm. And I'm just wondering what the update is, the latest on this inability of the company to do a proper and maintain a proper sediment control. restriction.
Well, I told the council if I just started smiling if you were to bring this up, just so you know that we had a sediment issue at my house with the Knowles Manor, which was not prepared. They did have a sediment fence up, but during the hurricane Isa, and then the following storm 2 days later, it flooded our backyard and went into my house and into my neighbor's house. So what you were seeing on Frederick Avenue was nothing compared to what my neighbor and I were living through. So we are working with them to fix this problem. And so I have learned even with the sediment fence, it doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So they've actually had to put a pump into that area. So
well, my question, Mayor Furman, with all due respect, has to do with the repeat problems that we've had on Frederick Avenue. I don't even live on Frederick Avenue; I live nearby, but the runoff from that construction site without any sediment control has happened on 5 occasions since late June, and town staff is fully aware of these. In fact, I sent a video to you, the mayor, and town council members on Tuesday showing the most recent runoff problem. This is a chronic problem that the construction company, Amorin Construction, is apparently disinclined to try to correct and control. And we've had 5 episodes in this summer, and nothing seems to be done. I'm just wondering what's it going to take for the town to find this company once and for all, so it demonstrates that the town means business when it means sediment control.
well, I think they have been reported to DPS, who has apparently not fined them either. They have been reported to us, and they've been issued warnings, and they clean it up. And then you're right, they do, you know, a vendor will come by, or another contractor, whether it's a utility or someone else, and they don't get the sediment fence back up. So, I mean, you're right. But we are working with them, and I'm not sure, you know, the county's not finding them either. Have you talked to them about that when you've called them?
I'm concerned mostly with the town's reaction, Mayor Furman. That's why I'm here tonight to talk about that. The county is a different issue, and it may be related, but I think that the town has primary interest in making sure that the sediment control regulations that protect the town and townspeople and their property, those regulations are respected. And I'm just curious to know why these repeat episodes continue to happen without the town stepping in and saying, okay, that's enough is enough, and applying levying a fine on this company, because it seems like this company is not going to learn otherwise.
Well, the houses are going to be completed soon. I think that, have they done the driveway, Matt, you know? I think
The driveway was scheduled for last week. I didn't check to see today if it was up.
oh, much rain.
You know,
Last-
with regards to the sediment control, that the county actually issues the sediment control permit. So they are the primary enforcement agent on this issue. We are the secondary. Each time that our code enforcement officer has gone out to the site, they've made the necessary adjustments to the silt fence. They put in the bales of hay. The problem is we are having very large rainstorms. Last Tuesday was no different. That bring up another issue. We don't have the ability to just find a contractor or homeowner. We have to work within our code. Again, Montgomery County is the primary enforcement agent. It's their sediment control permit. They have not fined them either. There was a county agent on site on Friday when I was there. They never even got out of the car because they didn't see an issue with the silt fence. So, I mean, we'll continue to monitor it. You know, if there's issues that we think that we can improve, we will. Again, Montgomery County is the primary enforcement on their sediment control permit.
That silt fence was down on Tuesday in advance of the tropical storm that blew through here. And the video that I sent to you, Matt, as well as the town council and the mayor, quite clearly showed that there was no erosion or sediment control in place, and that the runoff was pretty was pretty problematic. Now, I'm surprised you wouldn't have shared that with the with the county, since they, as you say, have the primary responsibility. But there seems to be a responsibility that the town has too.
Can I say something here?
Sure, go ahead, Jack.
My daily walk, I walked by this afternoon. They have poured concrete for the driveway between the two houses all the way back to the garages, and there is concrete side to side from the front steps of each house to the curb. So a lot of what was dirt is now concrete.
Okay,
There are 2 parking pads in the front plane of the house for each house, and then they have a shared driveway which goes to the rear of the property, where each property will have a single car garage. So I know they were looking to pour it. So if they got the concrete on the pads, they probably have the apron in at this point too. So we can check in the morning.
Yes, all of that was concrete as of this afternoon.
Okay.
Well, this isn't the first time I brought this to the council's attention, and you know, the repeated violations is really are really a problem, and I just really have a tough time believing that the town doesn't have any kind of important responsibility here, making sure that this is not repeated. But it has been repeated. We've had at least 5 of these violations since June, and it's befuddling, frankly, as to why this continues to go on. Everybody knows it's a problem, and yet it continues to happen.
okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions from the audience? Any waving? Okay, all right, so let's move on to the last item on the agenda, which is ordinance, resolutions, and regulations. Matt?
Mayor and Council, please see resolution number R-07-2020, a resolution to accept a contribution from Knowles Manor Senior Housing LLC to supplement traffic and parking enforcement. You'll also see attachment A, which is the agreement between Knowles Manor Senior Housing and Neighbors for a Better Kensington. This is with regards to the $100,000 donation that we talked about earlier this evening.
Okay.
Can
Council,
I make my statement now?
yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to note, and sorry for delaying this, but I thought it was most appropriate to say it now, that I was a part of the group that Matt referenced, the Neighbors for Improved Kensington, and that filed the petition, which ultimately led to this settlement agreement, including the contribution that we're talking about tonight. So I did consult with the Ethics Commission on this matter. And while it's very clear that I don't have a financial interest on this topic, I was advised by the commission out of an abundance of caution to avoid any potential perception of an appearance of conflict of interest to recuse myself from any matter, including this one related to this Knowles Manor project. So I just wanted to say that from the beginning, and I'm heeding their advice, and I won't be in this discussion or vote on this ordinance because of it.
Okay. Thank you, Nate. Council, do you have any questions or thoughts you wish to share regarding the resolution? Darin, you want to start?
I want to ask if, I mean, I think it's fairly widely known that the 2 spokespersons for this group and sort of the ones that led the charge are Delegate Al Carr and Pastor Joel McCrory. I want to know if either one of them is here to make the case for why we should pass this resolution and accept the money.
I cannot see my participants' names because it's frozen, so I don't know whether either one is on the.
I'm not seeing a record of Delegate Carr or Pastor McCrory on the Zoom.
I think both. I'm not sure about Jill, but I think Al is out of town. I don't know about Jill though.
Well, so is Conor.
Fair point.
That's fair, but not all of us have that glorious background and internet.
Well, if they've shown up to to push for passage of the resolution, I would suggest that we continue it for a future meeting.
Really?
Well, I don't want to go
It's
into a
not
long.
that big of a deal. Let's just do it.
I think it is, and I'm absolutely think.
Hello.
Connor, was
sorry?
that you?
That was not me. I believe that was
Hello.
Dr. Cooper.
Hey!
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Jim, for you. Would you like
I-
to speak on this issue?
I would like to talk about the $100,000 part of the petition.
Okay,
Since that if we can limit it to that, I'm here to talk about it.
okay, hold on just a minute. Let me have Connor, if he wants to say a few words, and then we'll come back to you.
Sure.
No, I'll let Dr. Cooper go first.
Okay? Jim, go ahead.
All right. Well, for the mayor and all the council persons, they already have been, I have talked to each one of them before the petition was actually filed about our intent and why the rationale for our intent. So it's not anything that they haven't heard already, and I just want to preface it with that. So I can speak for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I can give a long story of why we started 4 years ago trying to do something about the traffic that was cutting through the Pitchfork. There were increasing numbers of families with young people, children. The signs that had originally been up to prevent no left turns during rush hour had been mysteriously taken down at some point in the 80s, which Matt Hoffman was able to find and confirm that indeed happened. In fact, Darin, when he was on the head of the traffic committee, was a real bulldog in helping us get not only the speed bump, but also we did not, for reasons I won't bore you with the detail of, they decided they couldn't put no left turn signs up because they would affect people who lived here. So it was resolved that we would put together no through traffic signs in their place, and then have those signs and those restrictions enforced by the police. And with the addition of the dedicated police, it became even more apparent that we had some way to enforce this. 2 years ago, the Knowles Manor project threatened, at least to many of us in the Pitchfork, to exacerbate the problem that we were trying to tame. And so I and a number of other folks wrote to the council and to the mayor about that before the town made a decision to approve that plan, and raised our concerns about the effect that project would have on Pitchfork traffic and pedestrian safety. And actually, after the town voted to approve the project without any kind of requirements on the developer to do anything about our concerns, I pretty much gave up and thought we were probably impotent to do anything more. Until last fall, when I learned that we'd had this recourse with this petition. And so that was, I also had learned about the fact that, as I explained to all of you before, that I had learned through some developers who were knowledgeable in this area that it was not an unusual thing for residents or people who felt that the project was going to adversely affect them to ask the developer to proffer money to try to help alleviate the problem that we were concerned about. And it's an absolute legal common occurrence that happens in projects like this. So with that information, clearly I joined the group with the idea of trying to get a proffer from the developer. And that's when I talked to all the council persons as well as the mayor about this idea and whether they would accept it.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I do know that you came to us. I know I made it very clear that any funds that you were to receive could not benefit just one part of the town, that it had to go to benefit the entire town. So you understood, I can speak only for myself of where I stood on that, so.
Well, and I had no objection to that when I talked to you either.
Okay.
We would still have a lot more money to help enforce other areas as well as our area.
That's fine. I just wanted to make that clear and publicly. So
and I was hoping that in the future that when other developers are putting together projects which are going to affect Knowles Avenue and probably the Pitchfork, that we will ask the developer to proffer money for additional enforcement.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I guess Jim, thank you for your thoughts, and I understand that you've limited them strictly to the $100,000, and I have concerns to go far beyond the $100,000. And if Jim, if you don't want to speak to those, then I'm again going to ask that we continue this for a future meeting.
I don't feel I'm not qualified to speak. I don't know what other concerns they are, but my primary interest in this whole project was to try to do something that might help us.
And when you sued the planning board in court, on what basis were you asking the court to overturn the planning board approval of this project?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Darin.
When you sued in court the planning board and asked a court to overturn the planning board's approval of this project, what was the basis for your claim that the planning board erred in approving this project? I mean, and I understand if you're not prepared to answer that question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot.
You're an attorney, and you ask very legal type question. I have.
Well, it's also a complaint that came out almost a year ago. You know, so you're kind of giving him a pop quiz on something that happened
let's put
10
it off
months ago.
Let's put it off until it was August of 2019. So let's put it off until the next meeting. And I'd like somebody who is prepared to make the case for why we should accept this fund.
Darin, I mean, why do we have to relitigate something that already happened? We had the ethics decision, they got the settlement, almost everybody's okay with it. Why are we dragging this out? Why are we crucifying the residents and crucifying the activists who went for this and won it? Why are we cutting off our nose to spite our own face?
I am terribly uncomfortable with this serving as a precedent.
What would assuage you? What would assuage you?
Somehow promising never, ever, ever to do this again. But they can't do that because anybody in town.
Because people have rights to organize and advocate for themselves.
And that's fine. And if they want to do it and get whatever they can get from this transaction, which is, in my view, it was
not a transaction, it was a settlement. You keep trying to color this like it was seedy or unseemly.
But the point is that it was an absolutely frivolous lawsuit that took advantage of a developer who had bonds that would be jeopardized by a delay. And that makes it a strike suit, and it's frivolous, and I want the town to
But we don't represent the developers. We represent the town.
And the town should not be involved in this. The town should keep its hands out of this deal.
These
because
were residents. It wasn't the town.
but they're asking us to approve a resolution,
They're asking us to accept a settlement.
but we weren't a party to the lawsuit.
Third-party benefits to a,
No,
that
absolutely
never
not.
happens?
That's
Come
not what
on.
We haven't heard from Connor. Connor,
Yeah.
do you want to
Well,
on this?
here's, Jim, if I can, and again, I'll take the same tactic. I'm not looking to put you on the spot, but you volunteered to talk, and I really appreciate it. My question is, do you feel that the settlement agreement got you the type of traffic mitigation and pedestrian safety enhancements that you were looking for?
I hope so. Depends on how it's implemented.
Right. So part of the settlement outside of the $100,000, there was things like,
Connor, wouldn't that be in our purview to do, right? Like if we're accepting the settlement, wouldn't the onus be on the town to ensure that happens, not Jim Cooper?
I'm asking as part of the party who filed the suit and the agreement stipulates specific terms, I'm asking him if he thinks that those terms will meet the demands of the group.
I think it has
it's
a
a fair-
reasonable assumption. The
I also think-
reasonable assumption within that would be that the town would act in its own interest.
Understood.
Right.
I also asked the question of Jim, and I think he's very capable enough to
Yeah,
answer.
but Jim is also being put on the spot. You're saying you don't want to put him on the spot, but you are putting him on the spot. It's
I
9/11
do
at
believe,
night.
hey, Bridget, I do believe Jim volunteered to speak.
He volunteered to speak on a narrow topic, which we have now expanded, right? We
So
have.
let's put this off until next month and have somebody who's educated about legal issues and about this case come and answer the very real concerns that I have.
I have a feeling that nothing is going to make those concerns go away. And I
Well,
have
it
a feeling
doesn't
that
mean
we are just dragging this out and torturing people who are willing to speak up.
Well, let me put it another way, Bridget, because I don't think you seem to not want to engage in a conversation about this at all. So from my perspective,
I'm the only one who's been talking, who has any point of view that's different from you and Darin. So I don't know how that's disengagement or avoidance of it at all.
If you can make a motion, if you want to make a motion, you can do that.
I mean, it's
So-
pretty clear that if I make the motion now, if Nate's not voting, it's not going anywhere. So why would I make the motion?
It says, yeah,
Adjourn the meeting.
Bridget, if you want to hear from your other council members, please let me know.
What do you mean? From
I mean, I'm trying to explain to you what my thoughts are, and you don't seem to want to give me an opportunity to do so.
Well, I actually was trying to prevent you from harassing Jim Cooper anymore. That's what I was doing. But please feel free to talk.
Jim, do you believe I'm harassing you?
This again is
I haven't
not
heard-
fair.
I haven't
Don't
heard
put
the-
Jim
I haven't
in the
heard the
middle of
question.
this.
Bridget,
let Jim
I'm
answer.
offering a question. I'm not demanding a response. I'm asking if he'd like to respond. He doesn't have to. Jim is a wonderful person. He comes, he's engaged. If he says, I'm not comfortable answering that, or I don't want to, I have no ill will. I just want to ask a question. And the
I
question,
think it's unfair to put Jim in the middle.
I understand, and we've heard from you,
Let's
Bridget. I
put-
was hoping to hear from Dr. Cooper, if that's okay with you.
Connor, I don't know what the question is.
I know, I'm trying to get it out, Jim. I
Well,
truly
and
am.
if I can't answer it, I'll tell you that.
And I have no problem with that.
Okay.
And you were absolutely, you came to, I will just speak for myself, you came to me before this ever happened to say, hey, we're thinking about this. And you and I had a great conversation about it. So this group put forth a list of demands, and I don't mean that in a heavy-handed way, those things that you wanted to see from the developer, and in return for dropping your suit. And so the settlement, which we all get to see and read, identifies all those. The $100,000 is one of those. The others are all items related to the operation of the facility, or how they're going to mitigate traffic, or how they're going to handle deliveries. And my question is, all of those other things that are more operational, and many of them are, not necessarily inside the town's control. How they handle mail is up to the building. My question is just simply, do you feel those things which were agreed upon between the neighbors for an improved Kensington and the developer will address and will help to mitigate the fears of traffic and parking problems?
Connor, I think I talked to you before when we had our conversation that my involvement and my interest and my involvement in this project was the proffering, acquiring some money for enforcement, because I believe then and I believe now that if we have with this development, we're going to have traffic problems like they had on the other side of town with that development, and that we're going to have people coming through the neighborhood trying to get past the juggernaut. And I do believe that if we have officers assigned to stop the cut-through traffic, we will cut down we'll cut that down, and we'll increase the probability that none of our children in our neighborhood are going to get hurt, and that we will. I think that'll work. Yeah, I do. Enforcement. Just putting a police car on the corner of a street which says you can't enter and can't thread through to the other side of town, I think is a deterrent. You know.
I do, and I agree with you, Jim. I do, and that's one
so
element.
I think that's going to work, and that's. I'm sorry.
The operational things, like there's, they submitted a loading plan and a circulation plan. And they talk about, how cars are permitted to enter the building and exit the building, and how they will control their vendors and how their vendors approach the building so that they do not use town streets. My question is, do you think those things will have an effect, or do you think it really comes down to the $100,000 for additional enforcement?
Well, I had no, I had nothing to do with the writing of those other parts other than what I just talked about. And so I don't feel competent to talk about those other sections, only the one that I've just talked about. And I do believe we get more police to enforce those signs, and I'm going to be working. I'm hoping that I'm going to be meeting with Darin and his group, and I'll bring some other folks soon, because what we're hoping to do, and I've talked to Darin about this before, in the last year, about getting additional signs so that people on Summit Avenue, as it backs up on Summit Avenue past the swimming pool, that people won't be cutting up Prospect Street in the evening to either cut through to Connecticut Avenue or cut through to Knowles to beat the traffic at Summit and Knowles. And so we need more signage, and then to stop that, which has gotten really much worse, and not with COVID right now, but prior to that, I talked to Darin one afternoon on the phone, and there were cars coming up that road one after another. 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. It's just, and it's going to get worse if we don't have some additional enforcement for signage and enforcement. And I can bring as many people to the parking traffic committee. There's a number of people here who feel very strongly about that.
No, and Jim, I do appreciate you taking the time to answer it. If I can, just one more question that I don't have an answer to, and I'm not expecting you to have an answer to, but I'm going to ask it anyways. And that is, assuming, let's say the town passes the resolution and takes the money, what happens when the $100,000 runs out?
Well, I'm hopeful that that additional monies will eventually come forward, and I would hope, and in contrast to what Darin just said, that we will ask this new project being proposed, which is obviously going to be another blockbuster for the juggernaut at Connecticut and Knowles, that we ask for proffer for them for enforcement money as well, because this neighborhood is really going to suffer as a result of that if we don't do that.
Okay.
And I think it isn't something new or unusual. It was unusual that we asked for it, but it's not unusual for the planning board to do it. And if we were allowed, if we as citizens were allowed to talk at the development review board, we'd talk about that.
Jim, just on that note, yes, our development review boards are intended for the developer to talk to the development review board committee. But please don't undersell that, because I think you know that I make myself available before and after every DRB meeting in the same room where the DRB occurs. So while it may not be directly in that meeting, I just don't want people to leave with the idea that they can't approach us, they can't talk to us. To be honest, most DRB meetings, we entertain questions, right? We just get through the DRB meeting content first. We allow the DRB the opportunity to work through their questions first. But by and large, as long as I have been chair, we have always, stayed after and had a mechanism to talk to people. So I don't want, and I know, and it's my belief, I don't believe you're intending to do this, but I don't want people to be left with the idea that the DRB doesn't listen to the residents or listen to people. If anybody can email myself, Darin, other members of the DRB. You have two, I'm going off of memory here, at least two members of the DRB live within, I mean, one lives across the street from you and one lives a couple houses down from you. And any one of them, like myself, I hope people know to just bring their concerns to us. That's why we run the public process. And Jim, sorry, I hope I wasn't harassing you. I'm going to let you off the hook now. But readdress my bigger concern, which is why I'm interested in talking to people about the other aspects, not the monetary aspect, the proffer, but the other operational aspects, is to understand what of those they believe will help and will not, to help inform us as a development review board, to help us better understand what to engage developers on. Many of these topics were brought up and addressed in the DRB process. So I'd like to hear from somebody how they came up with this list and how they felt the DRB didn't address this. That's why I'm still waiting to hear from somebody, because I think, despite, Bridget, some of your thoughts that this is not worthy of discussion, there's a lot that we as a town, as a council, and certainly as the DRB
One
can
second.
learn.
I never said
Yes.
this wasn't worthy of discussion. Go ahead.
I think you said it was, what?
I said it was 11. It was 9/11 at night, and that you were going after Jim. That's what I said.
So
Go ahead, Conor. Continue.
So the point is, there's lots to learn from the residents that participated in the suit, and honestly from anybody about, okay, you felt that this was the best mechanism. Why is that? We held 8 DRB meetings on this project. 8.
Which Jim just said he couldn't talk, right?
To which Jim also said he and I had at least an hour-long conversation on the phone at one point, into which,
right, but he can't talk to the developer, he can't talk to the other DRB member.
Once our business is closed, he has the ability to go up and ask a question. I see it all the time.
The developer came to town meetings where every member of the public has an opportunity to talk. We don't make decisions at the DRB.
Well, Jim just said he didn't, right? Jim just said he couldn't talk at the meeting.
No, wait. At the meeting that was held in the fall of 2016, a group of us had planned the night before to have a series of presentations raising this issue, this issue about the safety and the traffic and the safety to Pitchfork. And when we got to that meeting, we were not allowed to present. We were allowed to ask questions, but we weren't allowed to present.
In 2016, I'm sorry that happened. In 2016, I was not the chair.
No, not the DRB. No, I'm sorry, the town council meeting. The town, not 2016. 2 years ago, 2018.
Okay.
The town had a council meeting where we thought we're going to be allowed to talk and raise our concerns about this issue. And at that meeting, we were not allowed to present we were allowed to ask questions.
Well, you wouldn't, I mean, if you were, I mean, everybody's allowed to ask questions, but yeah, if you were intending a presentation of some sort, I don't remember that per se, but.
Well, we weren't allowed to.
Well, I mean,
Tracey.
typically on a question, there's a time limit on, because like we could be going on till 9:30.
We almost never enforce a time limit either. Anybody can talk about anything from the public.
Right.
And so I don't know what meeting it was. I don't know if it was potentially.
Yeah, somebody say I want to give a presentation.
It could have been the developers community meeting, but I would need more information about that, because I find it inconceivable that at a public town meeting you wouldn't have been able to talk.
I can get you the meeting, and I don't have it written out. It was in the fall. It followed an email that I sent to the mayor and to the town council about our concerns, my concern, and they're about what I just talked about. And all right, I'm sure it was in the fall of 2018.
So here's what I offer up. Jim, first of all, thank you very much for your viewpoints and just for being willing to take some of the questions. But as the chair of DRB, as a council member who, we vote on these things, I still want to learn. I think there's, there are lessons in all decisions that one can learn from. And I want to better understand where they may think the public process failed, or the DRB didn't function the way they had hoped, or that the town could do better. And so for that reason, I make a motion just to continue this topic to a future meeting.
Would it be helpful to ask that someone on the committee, such as Alcar or Jill McCory, to come and speak on behalf of the group that may have more information?
Well, I mean, as I understand, the group appointed Al as the spokesperson, and I don't want to get into another scenario of putting anybody on the spot who doesn't feel prepared. I mean, if Al is their spokesperson, I if it has to be an invitation, I'd be happy to invite him. But yeah, I would hope that a representative from the group could come and just help go through the process a little bit and shed light into some of why they went about the route they did, what they felt was a shortcoming, how it could be improved, so that we can do that. If there's a way to improve the DRB, I want to do it. Much like when there was talk that it was weak on process, we sat down and we created a DRB process, and we documented that, and we now have a process and a questionnaire and a way that we go about business. But if there are ways that we can continue to improve the DRB, I don't want to miss an opportunity to learn. And I think it's valuable that we get that information.
Okay, all right. Well, there's a motion on the table. So is there a second?
Is this a motion to continue the proceedings to a future meeting?
Yes.
So I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's all three, that we will continue and invite Al to the next meeting to see if he can help understand what's going on with and it is not too late for the community if they have any questions about this issue. I know it may be a little bit confusing, but we are continuing the discussion to probably next month. But we actually have, what, 6 years or something to accept this money? Is that correct?
Correct.
And
6 years from the date of the signing of August 1st, when the money hit the escrow.
When they settled on the property. So we have plenty of time. And also, just so the people on the Zoom know, that if for some reason we decided not to accept the money, the alternative was to give it to Montgomery County for a recreation center at the HOC. I don't know at this time. Of course, things with the pandemic might have changed, but MCPS plans to take the HOC back as a pre-K facility, so I don't know how that would affect the funds if there's no community center in Kensington. So that's unclear to me too. So that might be something we could discuss with Al as well. Just what's the backup plan there if there's no community center. So does anybody from the audience have a question? Or they can hold off until next month when we have more information.
Can I say something?
Sure, is this Jack?
This is Jack Gaffney. I'm still on Frederick Avenue.
Hey, you haven't moved?
Yeah, reading that. I thought that was sort of strange. I think it would be more appropriate that if the money goes to Montgomery County should use it for traffic enforcement, which is what the original intention was.
Well, for some reason, they chose a community center, which quite honestly, $100,000 for a community center is kind of a drop in the bucket, but.
Yeah, I don't understand that. The money was supposed to be for traffic enforcement. If Kensington doesn't take it for traffic enforcement, I would suggest that Montgomery County should use it for traffic enforcement.
Okay.
We didn't write the agreement.
Yeah, that was, yeah, we did not write that agreement. Darin's right on that.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So
okay.
That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have a comment before we move on to the adjournment?
Nancy Sorden. Is this the public appearance part of the?
No, you've missed that part.
Oh, it was listed last.
No, it's listed above ordinance resolutions and regulations.
Oh, right. Well, okay. It listed, I see, it was listed under number 4.
I'm more than happy if you can keep it short. I'm more than happy to let you speak.
Great, thank you. I just have a question, basically.
Can you just give your name again and your street, just for the record?
Yes, it's Nancy Sorden, and I'm on Flyers Mill Road at the very west end on the park.
Okay.
And I have a question about the intersection at Flyers Mill Road and Summit.
Okay.
By the bridge that goes over the railroad track. Kengar, that goes into Kengar? Yes.
Yeah.
And
okay.
So I was wondering if that's going to be coming up, or if that's been dealt with at all by the.
I believe it's on the traffic committee. Your meeting, Darin, is that correct on your agenda?
It's on the agenda for the August 27th traffic committee meeting.
Oh, okay, and that's right. And can we attend that meeting, or
absolutely?
Are you able to make public comment?
This is one of those things where our committees typically don't, but just because when we're dealing with traffic issues, I like to understand local flavor, so we routinely do allow people from the public to speak.
Okay, and that's a 7 p.m. meeting?
Yeah, the agenda, I believe, is posted. You should be able to link it off the events calendar on the town website.
Oh, great. Okay.
And it'll have the Zoom information.
Okay.
If you have any problems, you can call the town office and the staff can email you an agenda, but it should be there. It should be a link from the events calendar.
Okay, great.
27th.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anything else?
The traffic committee, is that right?
It's a traffic committee, correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Council, staff, we're good? All right, I just need a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Our next meeting will be Monday, September 14th at 7 p.m. But hope to see you all at the DRB meeting by Zoom on Wednesday if you're interested in the Summit Avenue project. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Susan.
Have a good week, everybody.
All right, bye-bye.